From the very beginning of his life, Arsal felt like a stranger in his own skin. He was a complete boy, yet the world refused to see him that way. His voice carried a soft, almost feminine tone, and his hands and feet were unusually delicate, almost identical to those of a young woman. Relatives gave him nicknames that mocked his appearance, calling him Fragile Beauty instead of acknowledging his true identity. They whispered behind his back, laughed at his mannerisms, and spread doubts about whether he belonged to the world of men or the world of women. Arsal tried to live like any other young man. After completing his intermediate studies, he searched tirelessly for work, but each interview ended in humiliation. Employers stared at his hands, studied his walk or listened to his voice, and then dismissed him without hesitation. Some suggested openly that he was part of the third gender, though he knew deep within himself that he was not. He was a man in every way, yet trapped in a body that betrayed him to the prejudices of society. The rejection cut deeper than hunger. At home, where one would expect warmth and understanding, he found only further blame. His family looked at him as though he were a curse they had to endure. His mother, the very person who should have been his shield, often repeated the words that stung him most. If you had been born a proper son, you would have carried the family burden. If you had been born a daughter, you would have at least brought dowry or support. But you are neither. You are nothing. These words echoed in his ears every night, crushing his spirit. The poverty in their household grew heavier each day. There were times when there was nothing to eat, when the cupboards were bare and the family quarreled endlessly. His father stayed distant, while siblings often avoided him, embarrassed by his appearance. Arsal, at the age of 22, carried not only the weight of hunger but also the unbearable loneliness of being unwanted. The world rejected him and his own blood despised him. Eventually, unable to bear the suffocating environment any longer, Arsal packed what little he had and left for another city. He hoped that distance would grant him dignity, that perhaps among strangers his efforts would finally be recognized for his work rather than his appearance. Yet the new city offered no miracles. He wandered from place to place, begging for employment, only to hear the same words repeated in different accents: suspicion, rejection, mockery. His life felt like an endless circle, no escape, no respect. Only the shadow of his unusual features following him everywhere. But Arsal refused to surrender completely. Somewhere deep inside, a flicker of resilience still survived. In the new city, Arsal's struggles only grew sharper. Days blended into nights as he roamed unfamiliar streets with empty pockets and an even emptier stomach. Most employers dismissed him at first glance. To them, he was neither strong enough for a man's job nor suitable for a woman's role. Each rejection was like another brick added to the wall society had built around him. One afternoon, exhausted and defeated, Arsal stumbled upon a small massage center run by a middle-aged man. The place wasn't luxurious, just a dimly lit space with a few beds and the faint smell of oils. The owner noticed Arsal lingering near the door and, perhaps out of pity, asked, "Are you looking for work?" Arsal nodded eagerly, his heart racing with a fragile hope. The owner studied him for a moment before saying, "You don't look strong enough for hard labor, but maybe you can assist here." Massage requires careful hands, not brute force. If you're willing to learn, I'll give you a chance. For the first time in months, Arsal felt a flicker of relief. He accepted immediately and began his training. To his surprise, his soft, slender hands became his greatest strength. Clients often commented on how soothing his touch felt, how his hands seemed to carry healing energy. Some even tipped him generously. For a short while, Arsal believed his life had finally turned a corner. But happiness for him never lasted long. His colleagues at the center ridiculed him constantly. They laughed at his voice, mimicked his walk, and whispered behind his back. The cruelest blow came when one of them tried to take advantage of him late one evening, cornering him in the empty room. Though Arsal fought back and managed to escape, the violation of trust shattered his spirit. That night, lying awake on the thin mattress of his rented room, he realized he couldn't stay. The world of men treated him as an outsider, mocking him for not being man enough. If he continued to work among them, he would always be vulnerable, always a target of ridicule or worse. It was then that a daring thought entered his mind. If the world insists I'm a woman, why not become one in their eyes? He reasoned that if society refused to see him as a man, perhaps he could survive by embracing the identity they projected onto him. The very next day, Arsal bought an abaya and a face veil. Dressed in women's clothing, he became unrecognizable. His delicate features now concealed, his soft voice suddenly fitting the disguise. When he stepped back into the marketplace, employers no longer questioned his identity. They simply saw a modest young woman seeking honest work. For the first time, doors that had always slammed shut began to open. Arsal's decision to disguise himself as a woman marked the beginning of a new chapter in his life. With the abaya flowing around him and the veil covering his face, he carried himself carefully, mimicking the grace of women he had observed. For the first time, people did not stop to question his identity. They assumed he was exactly what he appeared to be, a quiet, modest young woman searching for work. It didn't take long before he secured a job at a clothing shop. The owner, a man in his late 30s, welcomed him warmly at first. "You'll do well here," the owner said with a smile. "A beautiful girl behind the counter attracts customers." People trust women with fabric and style. Men can be too rough for this business. Arsal lowered his head, speaking softly. "I prefer to keep my veil on." "It is part of my modesty," the owner shrugged. "As you wish. Customers might be curious, but it will not matter as long as you work diligently." For a while, Arsal found comfort in the routine. He folded clothes, arranged displays, and served customers who often praised his feminine politeness. With his first salary, he rented a small room in a quiet neighborhood and felt, for the first time in years, that stability might be possible. Yet shadows lingered behind the apparent success. The shopkeeper's kindness slowly shifted into something darker. Late at night, when the shop was closing, he would make excuses to keep Arsal back. He began hinting, then insisting, that Arsal remove the veil. "You don't need to hide from me," he would say with a sly smile. "Show me your face." "I promise no harm," Arsal resisted, using his usual excuse. "I had an accident. My face was scarred. I don't wish to show it." But the man was not convinced. One night, after ensuring the shop was empty, he locked the doors and tried to forcefully pull back the veil. In that desperate struggle, the truth was exposed. The veil slipped, revealing not the scarred beauty the man expected, but the sharp lines of a young man's face. Shock and anger twisted the owner's expression. "You tricked me!" he roared. "Yes, you deceived everyone pretending to be a woman." His words were laced with contempt, as though Arsal's mere existence was an insult. Arsal stood trembling, but something fierce rose in him. "You accuse me of deception," he said, voice trembling yet strong. "But wasn't it you who planned to take advantage of me? If I had truly been a woman, what would you have done? At least as a man, I can defend myself." With a sudden push, Arsal broke free and ran into the night, his disguise half torn, his heart pounding with a mixture of shame and relief. He had survived again, but he also realized that survival would always demand reinvention. After the horrifying incident at the clothing shop, Arsal walked aimlessly through the city streets that night, his heart heavy with shame. The world, it seemed, had no space for someone like him. As a man, he was mocked and rejected. As a woman, he was treated as prey. Yet despite the humiliation, he refused to surrender. He reminded himself that survival demanded persistence, even if it meant disguising his true self again and again. With no other choice, Arsal returned to his disguise. He bought another abaya, one that concealed him completely, and adjusted his voice to sound more convincingly feminine. Each morning, he prayed silently for an opportunity that would not end in betrayal. That opportunity came unexpectedly when he stumbled across a small boutique run by a middle-aged woman. The shop was filled with fabrics, embroidered dresses, and colorful scarves. Unlike the previous male employers, this woman studied Arsal's appearance with a calm, almost maternal gaze. "You look like someone who works hard," she said after a pause. "I need help managing this shop. Would you be interested?" Arsal's relief was immediate. A woman employer meant safety, or so he thought. "Yes," he replied softly, keeping his veil lowered. "I would be grateful for the chance." The boutique owner turned out to be kind and professional. She never pressured Arsal to remove the veil or questioned the story he repeated about preferring modesty. For the first time in years, he felt a measure of security. He worked diligently, handling customers with politeness and ensuring the shop always looked inviting. Slowly, he began to earn her trust. One day, the woman arrived at the shop looking visibly unwell. She rubbed her temples and winced as she spoke. My head aches and my shoulders are stiff. I don't think I can sit here long today. Arsal hesitated, then offered cautiously, if you allow me, I could press your head and shoulders. Sometimes massage helps. She agreed, leaning back into her chair. Arsal's fingers worked carefully, pressing with just enough strength to ease the tension. To his surprise, the woman sighed with relief. You have healing hands, she murmured. The pain is fading. Encouraged, he continued, his touch steady and professional. By the time he finished, the woman's face had softened into a smile. You are remarkable, she said warmly. You should consider opening a massage center. With hands like yours, people will come from far and wide. Though she likely meant it as casual advice, her words struck Arsal deeply. For the first time, someone acknowledged his unusual hands not as a curse, but as a gift. That night, as he lay in his small rented room, her words echoed in his mind. Perhaps this was his true path. Perhaps what the world mocked him for could become the very thing that sustained him. The boutique owner's casual remark about Arsal's healing hands refused to leave his mind. For days afterward, as he folded fabrics and greeted customers, he replayed her words again and again. What if she was right? What if his delicate hands, which had brought him nothing but ridicule until now, were actually a blessing? That evening, after closing the boutique, he sat on his bed in his small room, staring at his hands under the dim light of the bulb. They were slender, graceful, almost feminine, but steady and strong when pressed into flesh and muscle. For the first time in his life, he did not despise them. He whispered to himself, maybe this is the key. Maybe this is why God made me this way. Encouraged, he decided to take a chance. The next day, he gathered his courage and approached the boutique owner. Madam, he said softly, I want to open a small massage center for women. But I have no money. Could you lend me some? I promise I will pay you back. The woman looked at him carefully. Her eyes searched for dishonesty but found only sincerity. You work hard, she said finally, and you have been nothing but respectful. If this is what you wish, I will help you. Her generosity left Arsal speechless. She handed him a small loan, enough to rent a modest space and buy oils, sheets, and simple furniture. With trembling hands, he accepted, tears stinging his eyes. It wasn't just money, it was faith. Someone believed in him. Within a week, his new massage center opened its doors. It was small and humble, tucked into a quiet street, but it was his. He decorated it with soft curtains and kept the air fragrant with essential oils. Word spread quickly among women in the neighborhood. One client came, then another, and soon more followed. Each left praising his gentle, professional touch. Some claimed their aches disappeared. Others said they slept better than they had in years. They told their friends, and slowly, his reputation grew. Arsal worked tirelessly. By day, he still helped at the boutique, but by evening, he returned to his center. Women often trusted him enough to remove their heavy clothing, exposing aching shoulders or sore backs. Arsal, however, kept his eyes lowered, focusing only on his work. He had no impure thoughts, only gratitude that his hands could bring relief. For the first time, he felt dignity. He was not mocked here nor humiliated. He was respected, sought after, even admired. And yet, deep in his heart, he knew the disguise remained fragile. One accident, one mistake, and the truth could unravel everything. As weeks turned into months, Arsal's massage center gained steady recognition. Women from different neighborhoods began to seek him out, whispering recommendations to one another. They praised his honesty, his gentleness, and above all, the strange yet comforting power in his hands. For Arsal, it was a transformation. Where once his unusual features were a curse, now they became the foundation of his livelihood. But destiny, as always, had more twists prepared for him. One evening, as Arsal was preparing to close the center, a car stopped outside. A car unlike any he had ever seen before. Sleek, polished, and expensive, it belonged to a world far removed from his own. From it stepped a woman of commanding presence. She was elegantly dressed, her jewelry sparkling under the streetlights, her aura radiating wealth. She entered with slow, confident steps, and the air itself seemed to shift with her arrival. "I've heard much about your massages," she said in a calm but authoritative voice. "They say your hands heal pain where medicine fails. I suffer from constant aches. If you are as skilled as they claim, then prove it to me tonight." Arsal bowed his head respectfully, masking the nervousness rising in his chest. He guided her to a comfortable chair and began his work. At first, she watched him sharply as though trying to detect flaws or dishonesty, but as his hands moved with practiced precision, pressing and soothing, her face slowly relaxed. The tightness in her shoulders eased, and she sighed with relief. "You weren't exaggerated," she murmured after nearly an hour. "There is truth in your gift." When she left, her footsteps carried less weight, and she glanced back at him with something that felt like approval. The very next day, she returned. This time, she made an offer that left Arsal stunned. "Leave this small center," she said. "Come to my home instead. Stay there permanently. I will pay you more than enough to cover your living, your food, and your comfort. You will not have to deal with many clients, only me. What you earn here in a month, I will give you in a week." The proposal struck Arsal like lightning. He thought of the debts he owed, of the nights he lay awake worrying about survival. It was a chance to escape the constant fear of exposure and the exhaustion of working day and night. Still, he hesitated. "Madame," he said quietly, "I cannot close this place. I owe money. This center exists because of borrowed trust." Her lips curved into a confident smile. "Then I will settle your debts, all of them. From today onward, you will not carry that burden. You will work for me and only me." Arsal's heart raced. It was the kind of offer men like him never received: security, wealth, protection. He stood on the edge of a new chapter, unsure if it was salvation or another trap. Accepting the wealthy woman's offer felt like stepping into another world. True to her word, she cleared all of Arsal's debts within a week, returning the boutique owner's loan on his behalf and freeing him from the weight that had haunted him for months. With his financial chains broken, Arsal shut down his small massage center. Though it pained him to let go of something he had built with his own hands, the promise of stability and safety was too powerful to resist. The woman's mansion was nothing short of palatial. Its tall iron gates opened into sweeping gardens lined with fountains, while chandeliers glittered inside vast halls decorated with imported furniture and expensive art. To Arsal, who had spent most of his life in rented rooms with peeling paint and broken fans, it was like entering a different universe. She provided him with a spacious room in the servants' quarters. Even that space, meant for staff, was cleaner and more comfortable than anything he had known before. A proper bed, polished furniture, and a window that opened to the garden. It was a far cry from the damp, narrow rooms of his past. Grateful, Arsal bowed his head in prayer that night, whispering thanks to God for finally granting him relief after years of humiliation. His routine soon settled into a rhythm. Each evening, the woman summoned him to her private chamber for massage. She was strict about her preferences, demanding silence while he worked, but she also ensured he was well-fed and comfortable. Sometimes she would test his boundaries, asking casually why he always kept his veil and abaya on, even in her presence. Arsal would repeat the same story, that his face had been scarred in a terrible accident, leaving him too ashamed to reveal it. One evening, when she pressed him harder, he added more detail to his lie. He told her of an invented man who had thrown acid on his face after a rejected marriage proposal, leaving him disfigured for life. The wealthy woman listened intently, her eyes softening. "How cruel the world is," she said quietly. "But your hands carry no scars, and that is all that matters to me." Though her sympathy comforted him, guilt gnawed at Arsal's conscience. He hated lying, yet his survival depended on it. He reminded himself that he had no ill intentions. He never exploited the women who trusted him, never used his disguise for sin. All he wanted was to survive, to feed his family, and to live without fear. But beneath the comfort of his new life, a question haunted him. How long could this fragile disguise last before it shattered again? The weeks passed smoothly in the mansion, and for a while Arsal believed he had finally found a sanctuary. The wealthy woman, her name was Safina, grew accustomed to his presence. She trusted him enough to let him move freely through parts of the house, though she kept him mostly within her private wing. To the rest of the household staff, he was just another veiled woman in service, someone too quiet and disciplined to invite questions. Each night, Safina called him to her chamber for massage. The sessions often stretched for hours with soft music playing in the background and lamps casting a golden glow across the room. Arsal worked silently, his eyes closed, focusing only on his hands. He had perfected the art of separating himself from the intimacy of his work. Where another man might have been tempted, he remained detached, professional, even reverent. But fate, relentless as always, had its own plan. One evening, while pouring scented oil into his palm, Arsal's hand slipped. The glass bottle toppled, spilling across his abaya. The dark fabric absorbed the liquid quickly, leaving a large, glistening stain. He froze, panic racing through him like fire. Safina sat up immediately. "Your clothes are ruined," she said, her brows knitting in concern. She moved to her wardrobe and pulled out a silk outfit. "Here, change into this." Quickly, before you catch a chill, Arsal's breath caught. Change? Here, in front of her? The walls of the chamber closed in on him. "No," he whispered, forcing a weak smile behind the veil. "It is nothing. I will wash it later in my room." Safina's eyes narrowed. "I said change here." There is no need for modesty between women. She placed the garment firmly in his hands. "If you refuse, then perhaps I misjudged you." Arsal's heart hammered. This was the very comfort he had built his life around, the job that provided him food, shelter, dignity. If he disobeyed her, he risked losing it all. His throat tightened as he glanced at the closed door, at the wealth surrounding him, at the fragile tower of lies he had built. "I cannot," he murmured, trembling. "Please, forgive me." "I cannot change here." A slow, knowing smile spread across Safina's lips. Her eyes, sharp as blades, held his in an unflinching gaze. "Enough of this," she said softly. "Do you think I am a fool? I know what you are hiding. You are no woman. You are a man." The words struck Arsal like thunder. His legs weakened, and for a moment he thought he might collapse. His secret, guarded so carefully for years, was no longer his own. Shame burned his skin, hotter than fire, and tears welled in his eyes. He wished the ground would open and swallow him whole. Safina folded her arms, waiting. Now, she said, her voice calm but firm. "Tell me the truth." The silence after Safina's revelation was unbearable. Arsal's hands trembled, the silk garment slipping from his fingers onto the carpet. He felt stripped of every defense, every excuse he had so carefully built over the years. Tears broke free, and for the first time in a long while, he wept openly. "You are right," he whispered, his voice heavy with shame. "I am not a woman. I never was. I am only a man. A man cursed with features that make the world reject me." His words spilled out in a rush, years of buried pain surfacing like a flood. He told her of his childhood, of relatives mocking him, of strangers refusing him work. He told her of the nights he slept hungry, of the betrayal by shopkeepers and employers who had tried to exploit him. He described the day he donned the abaya, not to deceive, but to survive. Safina listened without interrupting. Her expression, once sharp, softened as his confession unfolded. She saw not a fraud, but a soul battered by cruelty, forced to carve a place in the world through disguise. When his story ended, Arsal wiped his face with trembling hands, bracing for scorn, for dismissal, for the inevitable command to leave. But instead, Safina's voice was steady, almost gentle. "You are not cursed," she said. "You are stronger than most men I have ever known. You did what you had to do, and you did it with dignity. You never took advantage even when you could have. That is not shame, it is integrity." Arsal looked at her, stunned. You don't hate me?" Safina shook her head. "No, from this day forward you will no longer pretend. But you will stay here, in my house. I have another task for you." Arsal's chest tightened as he waited for her next words. For years, his life had been a constant cycle of fear. Fear of discovery, fear of hunger, fear of abandonment. Yet now, standing exposed in front of Safina, he felt an unfamiliar shift. Instead of condemnation, there was acceptance. Instead of rejection, there was trust. Safina rose from her seat and walked slowly toward him. She placed a hand on his shoulder, steady and deliberate. "You will not leave this house," she said firmly. "But from today, you will not wear a disguise. No abaya, no veil. I want you to live as you truly are." Arsal swallowed hard, his throat aching from suppressed tears. "But what will the others say? Your servants, your friends, what if they find out?" "They will know only what I tell them," she replied with quiet authority. "And I will tell them this: you are my trusted aide, a man of loyalty and integrity. Their opinions mean nothing to me." Her confidence disarmed him. For the first time in his life, someone was willing to stand beside him, not despite his truth, but because of it. Safina continued, her tone softening. "I do not need massages anymore, Arsal. What I need is someone I can trust in this house. Someone who will protect me, guard my secrets, and keep my family in line when I'm not here. That person is you." The weight of her words sank in. Guard her house? Watch over her family? It was a responsibility greater than he had ever imagined, and yet it felt right. He was tired of hiding, tired of pretending. Perhaps this was his chance to finally live without shame. "I will do it," he said, his voice steady though his hands trembled. "I will serve you with all the honesty I have left in me." Safina smiled faintly, relief flickering across her weary face. "Good. Then from this day, you are not my servant in disguise. You are my protector, and as long as I live, you will have a home here." Years would pass, and Arsal would keep that promise. He became the silent guardian of her estate, respected by the staff and trusted by her children. The mansion that once threatened to expose him became the place that finally gave him identity and dignity. Looking back, he realized that survival had forced him into disguise, but truth had set him free.